Hello and good evening to Dr. Wei and class. Welcome to our presentation. We are from Group 3 and our paper title is Credit Risk and its Determinants, a study on the Japanese banking sector. So for this study, we will be focusing on the Japanese banking sector only and finding out what is the determinant for the credit risk. So let us start with the introduction.
Hello, Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. My name is Nurzuleika and my metric number is 246989. So today I would like to explain about the introduction of Japanese banking sector. Japan is the world's third largest economy with a nominal gross domestic product of 5.08 trillion US dollar, a robust gross domestic product per capita of 40,247 US dollar, and a leading nation in the integration of Industrial Revolution 4.0 with increasing automation, artificial intelligence and connectivity in its society. Japan has faced several banking crises due to an absence of credit culture and frail prudential supervisory framework. The Bank of Japan is the nation's central bank and is responsible for issuing banknotes, carrying out currency and monetary regulation, and ensuring smooth fund settlement between banks and other institutions. All of most marketable financial instruments were subjected to fair value accounting, which require banks to disclose unrealized capital gains and losses in their financial statement. Japan will remain the world's third largest and prosperous economy for the years 2019 until 2023 with a predict nominal gross domestic product of US dollar 5.6 trillion. And next we will move to problem statement. Credit risk, more than other forms of trade, is a significant threat to the long-term viability of banking and has embraced a poor management and credit culture. In order to make sufficient return from their lending operation, banking need diligent and collaborative effort in determining level of credit risk and maintaining the creditworthiness of their client. To gain further clarity and provide additional insight on credit risk determinant, impact and influence toward the broader field of finance pertaining the conventional banking sector, involving both internal bank-specific and external factors, the study seeks to investigate 5 banks in Japan other than the Japanese Central Bank, which is Bank of Yokohama, Shinsei Bank, Norin Chukin Bank, Japan Post Bank, and Chiba Bank, to discover the multi-dimension and popularity of credit risk, as credit risk management is a vital foundation in establishing bank strength and ensure longevity. So, the research objective of this assignment are to determine the internal bank specific factor and influence the credit risk, to determine the external macroeconomic factor that influence the credit risk, and to determine the both internal bank specific factor and external macroeconomic factor that influence the credit risk. So the research question for this assignment are analysis of relationship between internal bank specific factor toward credit risk, analysis of relationship between external macroeconomic factor toward credit risk, and also analysis of relationship between both internal bank specific factor and external macroeconomic factor towards credit risk. That's all from me. Thank you.
Good day to Dr. Wei and my fellow friends. My name is Lim Ken Ho, metric number 27682. And now I'm going to present about the literature review part of our group assignment. So we have selected 19 variables that related with a bank operation, and we did the literature review on it to enhance our understanding the factors that affecting the bank operation, and also ease the following research and studies. So we have the dependent variables in this study is credit risk, as credit risk is the most critical factors in the bank operation. So the credit risk may indicate the changes in the health of a bank loan portfolio and as well influencing the institutional performance. Also, an increase of a non-performing loan and extensive credit risk rationing policies are the essential causes for a bank to experience portfolio decrease over time. Therefore, we choose credit risk as our dependent variables. For the measurement for the dependent variable, which is credit risk, is non-performing loan divided by total loan of bank. For the dependent variables in these studies is the determinant variables to the credit risk, which is dependent variables. There's listed 14 internal factors and 5 external factors in the slide that associate with the studies. The 14 external factors are the non-performing loan loss provision, capital adequacy ratio, tier 1 leverage ratio, risky sector of loan, risk weight asset ratio, debt to asset ratio, debt to equity ratio, equity multiplier, liquidity ratio, return on asset, return on equity, asset management efficiency ratio, loan to asset ratio, and bank size. For the external factors will be the GDP, inflation rate, M3 money supply, and output gap and yield curve. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, so I am back again. My name is Laura Husnariani, matric number 258302, and I would like to present to you guys about the research methodology used for this study. So first, for the sampling procedure, we as a group, we selected 5 Japanese banks, not within a specific criteria, but just based on the availability of the data. So we selected Bank of Yokohama, Shinsei Bank, Norinchukin Bank, Japan Post Bank, and Chiba Bank. And secondly, for the data collection, for the 14 internal variables, we have computed and collected the data from each of the annual reports of the banks deriving from year 2015 until 2019, which equals to about 5 years worth of data. And of course, for the external data, it will not be available on the annual report, such as growth of GDP and the Japanese inflation rate for those years. So of course, we have to then rely on secondary sources. We chose and derived these data from focuseconomics.com, Statista, and International Monetary Fund. Thirdly, in terms of framework and model, for the model, we use the linear regression analysis equation for all of our models. So in short, we have run our data through 3 different models to answer all of our objectives. We use this linear regression analysis because we want to examine the relationship between these variables. And to note also, we did a multiple regression analysis because we are dealing with more than one explanatory variable. Lastly, in terms of analysis technique, we use a software which is very popular in researches and studies nowadays, which is the IBM SPSS software, which stands for Statistical Packages for Social Sciences. To be specific, you can do a lot of things in the software, but for this study, we ran the ANOVA test, which compares the means of samples and assess the significance level of each of the 3 models. Okay, secondly, of course, as I mentioned before, multiple regression analysis, because we are trying to assess the relationships between the dependent variable and the independent variables. We also ran a descriptive statistics, which provides us a summarization of data in terms of average and the standard deviation of the data. And then we also did normality test, which tests the skewness of the data. And lastly, just a bonus, we also did a trend analysis to provide the readers a visualization of the progression of the data over the 5 years that we are considering in the study. Okay, so now in the screen, there should be the research framework. So as you can see, credit risk is our dependent variable, and we are running 3 models, which are which represents independent variable. So the first model examines the internal bank-specific factors. The second model examines the macroeconomic factors. And lastly, the model 3 examines both internal and macroeconomic factors' impact towards credit risk. Thank you, and I will pass it to the next presenter.
Good day everyone, my name is Chao Chun Ho and metric number is 262352. So today I would like to present my part 4.0 descriptive analysis. So I will straightforward to the correlation table. In this correlation tables contains 15 internal factors and 5 external factors of Japanese bank. So I have highlighted 2 colors here. The first color is green, which means the positive correlations on credit risk, and pink colors represent the negative correlations on credit risk. So So we can see that LEV, RSEC, DER, TAR, EM, MGT, loan, bank size, GDP, M3 are the positive correlations on credit risk, while LLP, RWA, liquid, ROA, inflation, yield curve, output gap are the negative correlations on credit risk. So I will go back to the present slide. We are using the model 3 in SPSS because in model 3 we can gather more data, which is 5 years annual report for each Japanese bank, and the more data we have, the more correct SPSS, the result will be more correct. So we move to the model summary. So in model summary, you can see that they have 7 independent variables are significant on credit risk. So there are yield curve, regap, RSEC, GDP, inflation, and LEV, because they have the 0.649 of adjusted R-square, and the damping version is 2.897. So the damping version shows that it is a negative autocorrelation because the indicators is between 2 and 4. So I move to the second table, ANOVA. So the ANOVA table shows the same independence variables here. And these 7 independence variables are the higher impact on credit risk because the significance is less than 0.05. So I continue. Coefficient table. So from the coefficient table, we found that regap and REC are the most significant internal variables because they have less than 0.05. The p value is less than 0.05, and then LEV is the internal factor with less impact on credit risk, while GDP, inflation, and yield curve are the external factor which have the lower impact on credit risk because the p value are bigger than 0.05. So I will pass to the next presenter to present the chapter 5 conclusion and recommendation.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name Muhammad Hanif Fitri bin Mahaini. My metric number 265378. I will continue to the slide in the chapter 5, discussion and conclusion. In this chapter, which is the last chapter, we identify that the model 1 and the model 3 is significant related to the credit risk. Then the model 2 that not significant to the credit risk. We identify that the variable the most significant is equity multipliers and risky sector loan, RSEC. Both two are significant to the dependent variable, which is credit risk, that the equity multiplier and the risky sector loan shows the positive correlation on the correlation table. The equity multiplier 0.831 and the risky sector loan 0.451. In the coefficient table, equity multiplier shows 0.00 significant, and the risk sector 0.021. That both of two variables have significant impact to the CR with the p-value less than 0.05. The most significant is equity multiplier, which is p-value less than 0.01 significant. The R-square in the model summary shows the equity multiplier and the risky sector have 73.7%. They can predict or they impact the credit they impact the credit risk. 73.7% is a big percentage that the both variable give impact to the dependent variable. In ANOVA, we identify that equity multiplier and the risk assessor significant p-value 0.00 significant to the credit risk. Limitation for this study, we have a limit in the data and the time constraint, which is we only take 5 years in 2015 until 2019. Okay, lastly is a conclusion and the recommendation. Weak recommendation in equity multipliers utilize the less equity and acquire larger asset. The equity multiplier is a ratio shows the how many equity shareholder we use to finance the asset more than the company own money. To do that, we recommendation to the bank to largest their asset with recruiting more agent and paying them commission to promote the bank saving package in order to increase the bank asset through the citizen deposit, which means the bank's total asset will exceed the equity multiplier times, implying a large equity multiplier and lesser the credit risk. And next, we have a recommendation in resector loan, RSEC. We recommend that executive should conduct a greater due diligence before lending asset to this sector. The executive should conduct greater diligence before lending the money to the sector in order to avoid the insufficient asset to turn over the cash flow of the bank. And lastly, the bank executive in Japan should be concerned about the receptor loan ratio to be an indicator for the bank in order to avoid over-investment indexes in the sector. Okay, that's all from us. Thank you very much, and thank you, Doctor.